Hello and welcome to the episode 1 of BWRT, A Wonder of Modern Psychotherapy. Over the next 20 or so podcasts, you will hear about BWRT and how it has helped others and how it could help you. This will be one of the longer podcasts in the series, and whether you listen to the others in order or not, it is a good idea to hear this one first, though it won't really matter. You just won't have the same understanding if you come to it later. I'm Gavin Bowtell, an advanced practitioner of BWRT. You can find out more about me and the services I offer by visiting my website www.essexmindcoach.co.uk. So, EFT, EMDR, RTT, IEMT, CBT, all of these alphabet therapies. And BWRT, what's that all about? Well, let's jump straight in with the basics. The alphabet. B is for brain. W is for working. R is for recursive. T is for therapy. So, brain working recursive therapy, BWRT for short. Now let's break it down and go into detail. B is for brain. If you're a therapist or someone who's been on the receiving end of therapy, you will be familiar with the word subconscious. You'll have heard about things being hidden, repressed, or stored in the subconscious. You might have heard people talk about subconscious urges or motives. The thing about the subconscious is that whilst we can talk about it, whilst we can think about it, we can't actually say where it is or whether it exists at all. However, if I talk to you about your right big toe, your left little finger, or your stomach, you know that these things exist, and your attention goes straight to them, becoming aware of whatever sensation might be available to the senses in that part of the body. So too with the brain. You know where it is, and you can think about it clearly. One of the many and major differences between BWRT and hypnotherapy is that whereas hypnotherapy works with the concept of the subconscious, BWRT works with the fact of the brain and is therefore much easier to grasp. Specifically, BWRT works with that area of the brain that we can call the reptilian complex, and that part of the brain evolved nearly 500 million years ago. W is for working. Now, whilst it is true to say that your brain is individual to you, it is also true that its functioning is not unique to you. The way your brain functions at base level is the same for you and the majority of other people. Think of it this way. If you and every other person on your street have a Mac running Mac OS, you will all have the same basic software on your Macs. You might have similar apps to your family or neighbours, but you could easily have documents, photos and other media that are unique to your device. But despite the unique content of your device and the apps installed, every Mac in the street will run the same basic program and processes. Therefore, if you consider yourself to be neuroatypical or a part of a community of neurodiverse individuals, your brain still shares a great deal of its basic functioning processes with those who are neurotypical, which means that BWRT works perfectly well in most cases with people with Asperger's or ADHD, for example, as for the majority of neurotypical others. Earlier, I mentioned that the reptilian complex of your brain evolved around 500 million years ago. It didn't have social media to discover what was acceptable, or Snopes to tell it what was true. And it certainly didn't have YouTube to tell it how to avoid death or pain caused by an invading tribe or a marauding saber-toothed tiger. But your brain did have one very powerful response. It had fear. And fear was expressed by one of 3 F modes, as I like to call them. Whenever the brain encountered something new, it would briefly go into wait mode. We'll come back to that. And in wait mode, it would look for a match with previously encountered experiences, and it would ask 3 basic questions. Is it safe? Would it hurt me? Would it kill me? The evolving reptilian complex, the first responder in every situation in life, didn't have time to make a detailed survey of this new situation, so what it would do is look for more data, seeking to match this information with previous experiences. And so if this new experience matched with something that occurred in the past that had benign consequences, then this new situation would be marked as safe and it would carry on as normal. But if the new scenario matched with a perceived threat from the past, then fear would engage an F mode: flight, fright, or freeze. Flight mode: you run away to live another day. Fight mode: you stand your ground, destroy the threat, and live another day. Freeze mode: you play dead and hope the aggressor goes away and you live another day. But all this happens at amazingly fast speeds, however. In fact, the process takes place so fast that by the time we are actually conscious of responding, our response is in itself already 1/3 of a second old. And what this means is that everything that has happened to us in the past means something for our future. And as human beings, as biological organisms, we are subject to powerful biological imperatives. And one of those imperatives is to survive. Because an F mode led to survival and living another day, the brain now knows that what it did in that situation was effective, whether it felt good or not, and therefore it was likely to do it again and again in similar situations in the future. And I say whether it felt good or not because in fact your brain doesn't care whether you suffer anxiety every time you think about doing something that caused you anxiety in the past, but that you would really rather be able to do now. This is because the reptilian complex is all about ensuring your survival, not your happiness. But don't despair. Better feelings do play a role in the pleasure-pain principle, and I'll come to that in a bit. But here is a practical, though grossly simplified example of what I'm talking about. You see a dog. You've never seen a dog before. Your brain goes into wait mode. The dog jumps up at you. It startles you. You scream. You are rescued. The dog is shooed away. You are safe. The fact that you are safe tells your reptilian complex that it did the right thing in giving you anxiety and making you scream, because that resulted in being rescued and then being safe. So guess what is likely to happen in the future? It is of course likely that in the future your canine encounters will result in a similar dog-triggered anxiety plus the startle response. With repetition, the responses become stronger, automatic, and apparently persistent. But wait. Remember I said that when your brain encounters something new, it creates a wait state. And during that very brief period, it looks for the best thing to do. Well, guess what? In BWRT, we create that wait state artificially and replace your unwanted response, for example, a fear of dogs, with a much more resourceful one. And now, because the brain works along the pleasure pain principle, taking you away from pain towards something better, your preferred response, as we call it, to the trigger is already going to be suitable, so long as it is plausible, possible and fair. And because in BWRT you choose the way you would rather respond, rather than having suggestions given to you by a therapist, your brain automatically accepts what comes from itself as a good fit and a better outcome. Therefore, W is for working, because BWRT really does work with your brain's natural pattern of processing. In fact, if BWRT were to be compared to a technical device, it could honestly describe itself as plug and play, because it just works out of the box. Once a therapist has learned how to use it correctly, they will usually find very quickly that they become much more successful at alleviating the suffering of their clients. Furthermore, when the client, and that could be you, experiences a positive outcome from BWRT, the brain is now set to find similar success using BWRT in the future. That's the pleasure pain principle in action again. And R is for recursive. Something that recurs happens again. So there is an aspect of the BWRT process being repeated, that's all. That's all that means. Because most clients are unlikely to have an experience of BWRT, they aren't going to be sure that they're getting it right, although it's very simple. So if you're the client coming for BWRT, you might not be sure that you're getting it right. But the recursive aspect of BWRT means that there isn't really much chance of getting it wrong, as long as you follow what the therapist is saying as closely as you can and without trying to do something else. Within the recursive aspect of BWRT, there is an element of entrainment too, in just the same way that if I count 1, 2, 3, 4, you can expect to hear 5, 6, 7, 8. So the recursive nature of BWRT protocols allow the brain to settle into the pattern that has been learned and will lead to a positive outcome. T is for therapy. Yes, I believe that BWRT is a wonder of modern psychotherapy. BWRT is simple, safe, fast and effective. It's down to earth, easily understood and based on scientific understanding of the brain. It doesn't require the client to adopt any particular therapeutic belief. It requires no therapeutic touch. And unlike most other talking therapies, it doesn't require covering the same old ground over and over again. BWRT is used all over the world now, helping people live richer, fuller lives, free from fear and anxiety. So thank you for listening. I'm Gavin Bowtell, an advanced practitioner of BWRT. And you can go to my website www.essexmindcoach.co.uk to find out more. See you next time. Goodbye.